Hello and welcome to Franklin Covey's webcast. I'm Curtis Bateman, a Vice President at Franklin Covey, and today I'm joined by my colleague Kurt Garbett, a Managing Director with Franklin Covey. Together we've been responsible for leading and coaching global change initiatives for the last 25 years. And we, just like you, are experiencing an unprecedented amount of disruption in work and personal life, or as we like to call it, a lot of change. Today, Kurt and I are going to talk about Franklin Covey's change model and give you some ideas and tools to help you personally and professionally as you navigate this change that's happening right now. Kurt's going to start us off by talking about the change model.
So we're excited to share this tool with you, and there's a couple things that I really want you to pay attention to as we get started. This tool is predominantly used for two purposes. The first one is to help us understand just how change works, the process that all of us, whether we're an individual, a team, or an organization, we tend to follow this predictive pattern whenever we're impacted by change. So this helps us gain insight and understanding around how it feels to navigate through change and to deal with it. It also serves as a diagnostic tool to help us understand where we are in a given change, as well as where others might find themselves, so that we, if we're leading others or leading ourselves, it gives us an opportunity to identify where we are and kind of what are the next steps I need to take to move forward on the change. So to give you an overview of the change and the different aspects of it, if you look at the left-hand side, you'll notice an arrow, and by the side of it, it says results. These could be financial results, employee engagement, any various number of results that you might be looking at as you're being impacted by change. Our very first zone that you see there, where the straight line is the zone of status quo. That's generally just business as usual type situations. Then what happens to all of us is change gets introduced. Sometimes it's an internal change, other times it's an external change. Either way, whether the change comes from outside forces or inside forces, we find that the minute that change gets introduced, we start to feel a dip in our results. We start to achieve less, whatever those results are. And that enters us into the zone of disruption. And when we're in the zone of disruption, there's really two questions that we have to answer before we can move on. Those questions are what's changing and why. We also have to be able to understand how that impacts us. What does this mean for me as an individual? Until people have answers to those questions, they tend to stay stuck in that zone. But once we have those answers, we reach the point of decision and we get to move into the zone of adoption. The zone of adoption is when we really begin to start taking new actions. We start trying new things and trying to adapt to the change rather than sitting back and just being a passenger of the change. What you'll also notice is there's this nice smooth curve as we move along the zone of adoption. In reality, that's not really the way it feels. It actually feels a whole lot more like this. We call it the zone of adoption because we are trying new things, but oftentimes we can rename it and call it the zone of commitment and recommitment. As we're moving along, sometimes we tend to slide back down to that point of decision again, and we need to keep moving on. I guess the easiest way to say it is change is often messy. You've probably felt that and experienced that in your life. It's not like that smooth journey. Once we start achieving results that are greater than we were achieving prior to the change, we move into the zone of innovation. And the zone of innovation is where our new behaviors, our new actions, our new strategies really start to take hold, and we start to innovate new and different ways to gain even more. So that's the change model in a nutshell, very, very quickly. Curtis, do you want to help people understand some ideas of how they can help actually use this tool in their life?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kurt. So you'll notice in each of these four zones that different things are likely happening. And as leaders, as individuals, as people, we have the ability using this tool to figure out where we are. We do that by asking three questions. What do I know? What am I doing? And how am I feeling? By asking those questions, we can identify which of the four zones we're in. Leaders oftentimes like to just tell people about the change, and that misses an important leadership principle we call dialogue versus monologue. It's important to engage in a discussion with your people and invite them to share how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what they're doing. Giving them a chance to answer those questions and to ask follow-on questions allows you as a leader to identify where someone is in the change process, and as a result, help them make progress forward from the zone of disruption into the zone of adoption and onward into the zone of innovation. Kurt's going to take a few minutes now and tell us about 5 common responses we see to change.
So those 5 reactions to change, I think it's important to remember as you're thinking about yourself or you're thinking about your teammates and those that you have a chance to lead. We aren't locked into these responses. They are change specific. So depending on the change, we tend to respond in different ways. But when you are leading a change and working through one, I think it's also important to be able to recognize, so how am I responding? Or how might my teammates be responding? And how is that either helping them or hurting them? So those 5 responses, the first one is the mover. The mover sees the change coming most of the time. They act very quickly. They're looking for opportunities. They see change as an opportunity to gain something, and so they move quickly. We also have the waiters. The waiters tend to take a wait and see approach. They take a step back and say, so really what is happening, and are we really going to do this? They tend to look around to their teammates and say, is this happening? We also have those that are the minimalists. Minimalists tend to take a step back and say, so how far or how much do I need to change? I'll change enough, but I'm only going to change what's required. I'm not going to go the extra mile or above and beyond anything. You also have the resistors. The resistors are dangerous because they actually come right out and tell you, I think this is a bad idea. My last organization went through this change. It didn't work out so well, right? They have a lot of reasons for why they are resisting the change. And most of the time, they're pretty vocal about it. The ones that are not so vocal oftentimes are the quitters. And quitters we actually put into 2 different categories. There's the quitters that actually leave your organization. They say, this is too much change, or I can't take this anymore. I'm going to go find something new and different for myself. And you also have the quitters that stay. They sit in meetings, they nod their head, they agree, but they never get engaged with the change. They kind of take a back seat to it and take a wait and see attitude, but they're not going to really do anything to progress the change forward for you or for your organization. So there was a few last things as we wrap up the call today we wanted to share with you that we think are helpful for you as you go to take action now. So these are 3 steps that you can actually begin doing right away today. The first one is to teach the change model to somebody else. That's going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to ingrain the change model in your mind, right? That 3rd person teaching is going to be valuable to you to remember. Second thing it's going to do, it's going to provide a vocabulary for you and others on your team to talk about where they're at and why they're there. And in a very simple approach, you can literally just draw this on the back of the napkin, and we would encourage you to do so. Curtis, do you want to talk about the next step?
Yeah, so just as a reminder, it's important to identify where your people are in the change process. Don't assume. And as you look to explore where they are, ask them those 3 questions. What do they know about the change? What are they feeling? And what are they doing? As you do that, it will give you the ability as a leader to help them make progress through the change.
Great. Finally, the last step that we would really recommend taking is this notion of creating clarity for yourself and for others by identifying what are you moving from and what are you moving to. So, and what we would add to that is don't just pay attention to maybe the strategy or the tactics of what you're moving from and to, but get granular all the way down to the behaviors. If I'm going to be successful in this change from a behavior standpoint, what are the old behaviors that I used to take? And what are the new ones that I'm going to begin taking? And that creates and really eliminates a lot of the ambiguity that people feel in the zone of disruption.
Thanks everybody for joining us today as we've talked about change and the change model and how it can help you in your organization and in your personal life. If you have questions or need additional information, please reach out to us at franklincovey.com.